Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson, and I'm here with my partner in crime,
Todd Peterson. Thanks for joining us, folks. We've got a good one today, and this title, Jason was giving me crap behind the scenes. I probably deserve a little bit. We are here supporting Donald Trump, but we have a message, a PSA for all of the, and Jason, I got my thesaurus pulled up. I got 62 words, different ways to say stupid American voters today. How do we wake up half of this country that thinks Kamala Harris and Tim Walz make up the best presidential ticket in history, defies logic, blows the mind, and it makes me a little depressed to think that people out there support it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was giving Todd grief. He picks the titles, and I'm like, "Dear Dems, please listen to this podcast." I'm like, I wonder how much of our regular audience, like we're doing it earlier this week. We're trying a little new time, see if that improves live viewership. We're got a title like that, and my suggestion for a title was Democrats, how can you be so R-word tarded to fall for this stuff? And Todd thought that might be a little overly aggressive for some of the social media platforms we do the first hour on.
Turns out they don't like the word tarded too much, Jason.
Yeah, they don't like when you bring up the tarded. So, but I gotta say, like last week we dove through Tim Walz and all his lies. We're gonna go through more lies. We talked about how everybody hated Kamala. We showed old clips, and now they think Kamala's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They keep feeding you these polls that they sample like 70% Democrats to show Kamala's winning by 2%. And, folks, if you're watching this podcast and you're like, what we're seeing is not real, you are correct. You are seeing a television show. You are seeing media manipulation. It's all a big mind screw, and we're going to break a lot of that down this week, Todd.
100%. Yeah, we don't have the clip today, Jason. I think everyone's probably seen the Colbert moment when he had Caitlin Collins on his program, and he talked about CNN tells the truth, and the entire audience broke up in laughter. And she even had to ask, like, was that supposed to be a laugh line? Like, I imagine that entire audience is going to vote for Kamala Trump. They all watch CNN, and even they understand that they're getting lied to. It was a really bizarre moment. And that's what we're trying to figure out. Like, how are you this stupid? You can laugh at that line. You know that CNN doesn't tell the truth. And then you probably go home and watch CNN and believe every hoax that they've ever promoted out there. This is where we're at. Jason and I are running out of words to describe people that are so oblivious to reality at this point. You know CNN lies. You know the polls are not true. Like, you know none of this is true. But Orange Man is bad. That's all we ever get.
Well, yeah, and it's fascinating, and we're not going to break it down this week, but Kamala's releasing her economic plan. And just on the surface, I did a quick scan. I'm waiting for the official documents. But this is the most idiotic plan ever. They're going to transfer a bunch of medical debt from people to the government. By the way, we've covered it on the show. The government is $35 trillion in debt, adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days. We pay more on interest than we do on military spending, and we spend $6 trillion a year. We collect $4 trillion in taxes. So we're going to move all this medical debt to the government. Then we're going to institute price controls, which price controls have worked exactly 0 times in the history of mankind. You limit what people can charge. It's straight up communism. You let the free market determine. You can nudge supply demand. And then the one that killed me is they're going to give $25,000 a person to first-time home buyers, up to 400,000 home buyers. So I roughed the math out. It was like $1 trillion that they're going to do. So we're going to transfer that $1 trillion. And you don't have to be an economist to say if the government's going to give you $25,000. Todd, what's going to happen to the price of houses?
If I'm selling my house and I understand that you are a first-time homebuyer, Jason, guess what? You just got charged an extra $25,000 on the sale price.
Right. And it's not even so much that. It's I, as a homebuyer who might not be a first-time homebuyer, I'm going to offer you $400,000 on your house. Well, you as a first-time homebuyer will offer $425,000 on the house because you have a free $25,000. And the federal government is going to pay for that. With what?
And all these selfish assholes out there thinking, I deserve to have my student loans repaid or paid off by taxpayers. I deserve, as a first-time home buyer, this $25,000. you are screwing over your kids and your grandkids because they are on the hook for these trillions of dollars in debt that bill is going to come due. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, maybe in 20 years. But you are screwing over future generations of Americans, your own kids, because you are a selfish asshole that doesn't know economics 101. You don't know anything about economics. You just care about yourself.
Yeah, and actually, hey, shout out. We got some good Facebook chat going. Gunther Husband, Democrats are empty promises. If you believe him, you're as sick as them. Gunther, appreciate the comment, but I got to correct something for you. They are not empty promises. They are really going to give they're going to transfer money just like they did with student loans from citizens to the government and make everybody pay it and make your grandkids pay it. They will not stop. They used to make these promises of what we're going to do with the money and people voted for it. And then they got grief like, oh, they never followed through. They've started following through. And the following through is worse than.
We don't want them to fulfill campaign promises anymore.
Right. Yeah. Because they are just transferring all this debt from citizens to the government. The only way to solve the problem is print more money. And then if you print more money, money's worth less, prices go up, and it is a doom cycle. So no, I expect they're going to try to actually do some of this stuff, and it's going to have catastrophic effects. I mean, every communist nation in our lifetime or the last couple hundred years, they've tried price controls, and price controls result in supply dropping. And then all of a sudden you have supply scarcity and people can't make money. The people that benefit are large corporations because they can leverage their costs. And then when they leverage their costs, that just drives small business out of business. I mean, it's just Todd.
Maybe we have to dedicate an entire show to this price control issue. There's so much to get into. I think to Gunther's point, I'm going to defend him a little bit. They have all these little catchphrases like, we're going to make groceries affordable again. We're going to make housing affordable and available to everybody. So they use these empty promises that people are like, well, I want to be able to afford groceries. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris because she has a plan to make groceries affordable. And that's all the farther they get with their thinking, because they hear a politician promise something to them that sounds too good to be true. And Jason, like we said, they are too tarded to figure it out that this is an empty promise. It is going to screw you and your family over if you vote for them. And we're trying to break through to these folks. And I know our viewers out there deal with the same nonsense. They have family members and friends that vote Democrat, and they get stuck in these conversations like, I don't even care how you feel about Donald Trump. Do you like freedom in this country? Do you like being able to afford a tank of gas?
Yeah, it's funny. And I mean, I saw a tweet. I should have probably screenshot it for here, but they had released inflation. They're saying, oh, inflation's at the lowest level ever. It's at 2.9%. And oh, this is a win. The Inflation Reduction Act, blah, 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 blah. And then somebody in the replies, it was a Democrat, they in good faith said, can you explain why stuff's so expensive if inflation, they keep telling me, goes down? And this guy had a perfect response. He says, okay, if 5 years ago I weighed 200 pounds and then I added 10 pounds on the next year, I added 5 pounds on the year following, I added 7 pounds on the year after that, I added 3 pounds on this year, I'm still at 230 pounds or whatever the math was. But I gained less weight this year than I did last year. And it's like the perfect analogy. It's right now, if you have $100 bill, $100 bill is worth $80 compared to when Joe Biden took office.
And do you think it's going to be worth even $80 if Kamala Harris wins? You're looking at a $50 bill in 4 years.
Correct.
I don't know. Yeah, Jason, you and I are pretty black-pilled right now. We look around and we think, my God, how did you support Kamala Harris before this last week's announcements? She was already low IQ, already a racist. She already wanted to tax you to death and lock you up if you had American first values. And now she says, I actually am an open communist. I want to put price controls on goods and services. And people are still lining up and they're saying, yeah, Orange Man bad.
Should we start with that one video, the Kamala Walls video, Todd?
Yeah.
To kind of break down how, for a Democrat, we're just going to show you, like we broke down last week, Tim Walz's lies about his military service. But we're going to go into showing how they're trying to sell these idiots to the American people. And then we're going to fact check. Todd had a great analogy in the before show meeting that we're going to talk about. So
I hope I remember it, Jason. But yeah, let's get to this super fake, super cringe video with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And we have a lot to say about this one.
Now, keep in mind, too, while Todd's getting queued up, Kamala Harris has done taken zero questions from the press. Kamala has done zero press conferences. Kamala has had no time to do any of that.
Like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
Pretty much ground beef and cheese.
That's okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No. Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota, you know.
I'm the first vice president, I believe, who has ever grown chili peppers.
I'm trying to expand my food knowledge.
You know, we've got some cantaloupes. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
F all of this. Just F all of it.
Yeah, so for those who didn't see, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz did this little sit-down video, get to know him. Tim Walz started, it got clipped a little at the beginning, talking about, I have white guy tacos. And she says, what are white guy tacos? What's that, like mayonnaise and tuna? And he's like, no, ground meat and cheese. That's it. Now, Todd, you had talked about in the pre-show how this falls into like all the tropes that they're pushing in the media. Do you want to expand on that?
I would love to. So folks, I'm sure if you have Netflix or Hulu, or you even watch every commercial ever produced now in 2024, it is always the same. The old white guy is a bumbling idiot. They can never make dad the hero. They can never make the man the hero. The patriarchy needs to be smashed. And so who do you bring in as a savior? This unstoppable woman, usually a woman of color. And if you've seen any of the Disney live remakes, they've whitewashed away dads and male figures and princes, and they always have this strong female lead of color, as they like to sell it. And what a perfect encapsulation of how much they hate you. Tim Walz won a recipe contest for chili not that long ago. This is a man that knows how to use spices and knows how to cook. It's probably not his recipe. I don't care. He won the recipe contest. And here he is portraying himself. He agreed to look like an absolute clown, saying, I only like ground beef and cheese because I'm from Minnesota. And here's Kamala Harris coming in to school him about how to eat right. It's also fake and stupid.
And I got to say, we're from Minnesota, and Minnesota is not always the most exotic food destination. But to categorize us as give me mayonnaise and tuna and whatnot. Do you have that recipe, Todd, that he won?
Yeah, we should pull it up. And it had garlic, it had paprika, it had some other like chili powder. And so you had the comments below like, that's still not spicy. I don't care if it's not spicy. We don't eat bland just because we're white Norwegian descendants. Like, and I saw another great comment on one of the tweets. I think Cernovich had the tweet where this comment was, if you're going to go after white people food, and again, it's always easy to just say white people, you are ignoring all German cuisine, all French cuisine, all Italian cuisine, Greek cuisine, Mediterranean cuisine. If you want to get into white, there is so much delicious white food out there, and it's so stupid that we even have to defend this. Like, of course there's good food in white cultures, but we're now just homogenized as white and stupid and bland and boring. Jason, people support, the only people that vote Democrat, this was another good comment on there, are women or effeminate men. You are a low T weak man at this point if you support that, because Tim Walz represents just the low T beta male out there that hates themselves. That's all this is.
Yeah, it was funny because Tim Walz, so in 2016, he entered a hot dish contest. And he had kind of a flavorful hot dish thing. Todd kind of went through the recipe. It was on his Twitter timeline. He was bragging about it. And then he completely subjugates himself and takes a knee to this communist black Indian lady and acts like being white male is inferior to what they have going on. It is the most insane, self-emasculating thing I have ever seen. And I mean, shouldn't he be like, hey, we're from Minnesota, like we're not all like ground beef and cheese, like, hey,
or even if we are, who cares? Own it.
Right.
I'm from Minnesota. This is our palate up here, and that is perfectly acceptable. Like, he just threw every single Minnesotan under the bus. You guys are bland and boring. We need to learn from ethnic cultures how to be better and superior. So debasing. It is so So pandering to the non-white community. This is what their platform is. I know we've got a comment in here. I'm not going to scroll through all the comments right now, but yeah, I don't care. If that's all my diet is ground beef, I am fine with that.
It is the, and we're from Minnesota. Todd and I, full disclosure, we're both from Minnesota. We have seen the idiocy of Tim Walz. We have seen what Tim Walz is. He is a serial liar. He has done awful things to this country. It is remarkable. Now, this week too, Todd, you had the one video that talks about his financial disclosures.
Let's get to that. I want to get to the lies first, and then let's show that one.
Yeah, let's get to the lies.
Just because, folks, you might be saying this is about cooking. Who cares? It is so much more than that. It is about how Tim Walz lies about everything. And every day you hear about how Donald Trump is a serial liar. He always lies about stuff. They'll never tell you an example about how he lies, but Donald Trump lies. Tim Walz is lying about cooking, which, how do you lie about cooking? Just own we know you had the recipe and you won the competition. Like, why are you lying about this? Lied about his military service, his military record. He lied about the DUI arrest. He lied about coaching football as the head coach of Mankato. Every single thing this guy talks about is a lie. And it's so easily disproven. It's like, why are you lying about this? I can fact check you in real time, but that's all they do. And then you're going to believe him that he's going to make America a better place? Like, that is the ultimate lie.
Right. Well, and it's funny, too, because we broke down last week the timeline to Tim Walz. So Tim Walz in March got notification and he released a campaign letter that said, hey, my units are going to be deployed. We're going to have to figure out how it affects my candidacy. And 60 days later, he resigns. And after he resigned, then a few weeks after that, they got their official deployment letter. So it was clear he knew there was a good chance they were going to Iraq. I'm told, I haven't served in the military, this is kind of how it works. They give you a heads up. Hey, let your units know. It looks like this is going to happen. War is flexible, so you don't know exactly, but start preparing. But then this week, some of the Twitter followers, Dustin Grage is one I follow on Twitter for Minnesota politics. He came out with a great takeaway too. So Tim Walz, when he got his promotion to Sergeant Major, I believe, it was provisional, and he had to complete coursework in order for the promotion to be effective. He resigned before completing the training, so technically he was demoted, but he's still claiming the higher title. But an interesting point of that, the reason they gave him the provisional promotion, which he never officially attained, was because they were understanding that there was a likelihood they would need to be sent out. And so they needed to get more people in leadership positions, expand the leadership branch. So they go to him a year or two earlier and say, hey, there's a good chance you guys are going to get deployed. We're going to give you this promotion. You got to do this training. So when we do deploy you, we have enough commanders. And so he even had a pretty good idea a couple years earlier that he was going to be deployed. It's like,
and if you've listened to Walz speak, I'm going to get to Dottie first because Dottie follows the news. I'm surprised she didn't bash him for eating ground beef. There was that video circulating when she was, I think, campaigning in 2020, how she wanted to like ban red meat.
Right.
So that's what you're voting for, Democrats. You're voting for crickets. But Walz was up there stump speeching in the campaign, I think it was this week, talking about how dare someone attack my military service. When I see a veteran, I just say thank you. And he's saying, like, we're not attacking Tim Walz for his military service of 24 years in the National Guard. I tip my cap to anybody that's in the National Guard for 24 years, as we're all doing. No one is going after Walz for being in the National Guard. We are going after him for lying about what he did and how he retired and what he knew when he knew it. National Guard service is not even on the table. It is all those other elements to it about how you did not retire at Command Sergeant Major. You didn't retire because you didn't know you were going to get deployed. There are so many other things to this story that he's still glossing over. He's still lying about it.
It's unbelievable.
But let's get to Gen Z. So just understand, audience, and this is for the Democrat voters out there, when you vote Democrat, these are your kindred spirits. These are the people that you are thinking like. And I feel sorry for Gen Z sometimes.
Any stocks in anywhere. He also doesn't have any like real estate or other assets that aren't really like, he's just like a guy. He's just like a normal guy, which is really appealing.
That's why I think Tim Walz is like so exciting for me for him to be vice president. Like, he's like more of a person than these politicians are. Like, most of these politicians were born like with a lot of more money. They've never really experienced being lower class or what it's like to be.
Do you think she would support JD Vance for not being born into money or being lower class and have an addict mother and raised by your grandmother and enlist in the Marines because when you don't have a lot of options, that's what a lot of folks do? And again, thank you for your service. Would she apply that logic to JD Vance?
I'm thinking no.
Does she even know that about JD Vance? Like, this is the bubble and cocoon they're in, but let's keep going.
Well, yeah, and let's just
An average American
No, you can keep going.
person.
He used to be a football coach, like for a local team, and again, very low-paying job. You know, not a job that you're in because you want to make a lot of money.
Although he is a gun owner, he's put into legislature stronger gun reform. He has a daughter who it sounds as though he has a very good relationship with, and she has also communicated with him about like her opinions on school shootings and how that has affected her, and then also taken that in and changed his opinions.
Is that the same daughter that tweeted out to Black Lives Matter rioters and looters where the National Guard was going to be deployed within Minneapolis? That daughter?
That would be the daughter, Todd.
Okay, just checking.
Todd, thoughts on that?
Well, I always got to go to the Department of Education. Folks, when you sign up for a federalized education system, this is the intentional product. They want you stupid and brainwashed. Can they even form? I dare say Kamala Harris is smarter than them, not by a long shot, but my goodness, can you say like more often? Can you? Their rationale for supporting Tim Walz: he's an everyman. He doesn't have assets. He didn't come from a lot. What?
So let's put this in perspective. So here's Tim Walz snap bio for those who don't know. Us in Minnesota have been subject to this for a while. Tim Walz went to school, became a teacher. He was a teacher down in Nebraska, and he was a coach or assistant coach on a football team. And then he got a DUI, so he got fired. And they aren't talking about that.
Oh, he lied about his DUI too, Jason. Did you know that he told them it was his ear thing because he got injured in the National Guard?
Right, yeah. Yeah, and this is like, don't quote me on the year. I think it was 1995. So then he takes a job sending students to communist China for a number of years where he was coordinating like international travel. He went to China. He was actually in China during the Tiananmen Square massacre. Then ironically, he gets married to his wife on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, which just seems weird. I don't know. But anyways, then he comes back. He becomes a teacher at Mankato High School, and he was an assistant football coach. Now, if you've ever been involved in high school athletics, especially in Minnesota, where it's not a huge thing, the defensive coordinator of a high school football team, yeah, it's not really all that intense. They did have one good year. They won the state championship. But he portrays it like he was a coach. He wasn't. He was the assistant defensive coordinator. But anyways, neither here nor there. But he's a teacher, and he's got a decent job, and he's in the Army Reserves. So at this point, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, if you're a teacher and you're making military reserve money, one would think you would start accumulating some assets. Maybe buy a house, maybe pay for a house, that kind of thing. But in 2005-06, he decides to run for the House, where all of a sudden he starts collecting over $100,000 a year in just his salary, not including any other money that he has. So from 2006 through present, which we're coming up on 20 years, he's made over $100,000 a year. So in 20 years of making $100,000, this guy doesn't have any assets or holdings or that kind of thing. This is not a smart man. This is not somebody, I don't care who or what you are, and everybody, I mean, I grew up dirt poor. My story's more like JD Vance's than anybody, but at the same time, how are these idiot kids going, oh, he's just like me? no offense, if I picked any one of those kids out and gave them $100,000 a year job for 20 years, I would hope at the end of that 20 years they had some asset to show for it. Hey,
Jason, it's worse than that. Can I jump in really fast? I did a quick Google search. In 2005, the salary was $162,000.
Right.
He's been making at least $162K a year for 20 years.
Right.
And has no assets.
Think of that. And people are portraying this as, this is phenomenal. I don't understand. And even when, when he's in the governor of Minnesota, he's still making over $150,000 a year. It's insane.
I understand. People are always like, well, he didn't have to because he has pension from the Guard, pension from the teaching, pension from Congress. That is immaterial. I have those pensions as well since I was in education. I was in public service. I also saved on my own and live in a house. What was this bum doing for 30 years? Like renting?
Right.
Like, where were you living?
I told you.
Mankato, folks outside of Minnesota don't know Mankato. It is, an hour and a half from the Twin Cities? It is cheap to live there. You can buy a house on a teacher plus National Guard salary. Not a problem.
Yeah, and actually, to put Mankato in perspective, Mankato's a small town. I mean, it's got like a mall and stuff in it, but it's surrounded by all these really small communities like I grew up in, where you can drive 20 minutes out of town. You can get a great house for 130 grand, 150 grand. I mean, it's not expensive living, relatively speaking, in Mankato.
No. And I imagine his wife worked because she seems like a strong woman.
Right. Yeah, but somehow you're a hero because you have acquired no assets, making $150,000.
But you're going to make economic decisions that impact every single American. And no wonder he didn't know how to buy a house, because he's on a platform that wants to put price controls in and give first. I wonder if Walz would qualify for that first-time home buyer.
That would be kind of the iconic twist. Tim Walz, they pass this law and he's like, I'm going to go buy my first house at 62 years old.
Thanks, taxpayers.
Thanks, taxpayers. You get to pay for that as well as my salary.
Yeah, we like this analogy a lot. We're more Star Wars folks on this channel than Star Trek, but totally understand the Borg mindset. Like, they are totally trying to assimilate every single person. Resistance is futile. You will think the same, act the same, say the same things. I just can't get over the logic and rationale. Like, there is none. When it comes to these idiot Gen Zs out there, and Jason, we support Gen Z as well. We saw all those college campus protests. Like, it might be Gen Z that saves America, all the frat guys. But people on here saying, I like Walz because he's an everyman, because he's dirt poor, came from nothing. And I'm in my head the whole time, I'm like, that is J.D. Vance. Like, here you've got Tim Walz for the last 20 years as an elitist snob who made you not go to church, wouldn't let you run your business, jailed grandmothers for opening their businesses during the pandemic, released violent criminals at the same time under the guise of, we don't want to have too much overcrowding going on. We have videos of him apparently sending the police in the cities to shoot people on their decks with paintballs, but such an everyman.
Well, and that's what's funny too, this MSNBC host, when they're talking about that, where's the follow-up question where you say, hey, just so you know, this guy's made 150 grand a year for the last 20 years. Like, do you think he should have assets, or at what point is he just bad with money? Like, I mean, what do you even spend it on?
Yeah, where does that money go? And are you getting, I'd love to, I don't know if we can know all the bank records, but like, is China paying him somehow? Is he hiding his assets somewhere? Like, I simply can't wrap my head around the fact that a man that is 62, a boomer no less, boomers have made out with the greatest economy in the history of all countries, and you have nothing to show for it? Like, there's something else behind the scenes going on here.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how frivolously you have to live to make over $100,000 a year and own no assets. Like, not even own.
I know that's the least of my concerns with Walz, but it is so perplexing that we need to spend time on this. Like, I just don't get it. There's so much you don't get about Democrats. Add this to the list.
Right. Oh, Todd, where do we travel to next?
Okay. We're going to keep it light for a little bit here. Here is Kamala getting confronted actually by a journalist. I forget when this interview took place because she avoids the media at all costs now. But let's get a clip of her confronted by some uncomfortable truths and see her reaction.
Different in the policies that you've supported in the past. You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. but
Yeah. Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator. You supported the Green New Deal. You supported.
This is from her campaign in 2020. For those who don't know, now this is interesting. They're talking about her liberal policies. She has no policy positions on her campaign website as of. I think some are starting to drop on today with her financial stuff that's awful. But I went back and was looking at her policy prescriptions when she ran for president, and it was awful. It was Green New Deal, it was open borders, it was giving citizenship to all the illegals. It was all of that. But you see here why Kamala Harris is hiding from the media, Todd. And we call it a modified basement strategy. So what she's doing, Joe Biden got away with 2020, fooling a bunch of people up until the debate with Trump, because they put him in his basement with a teleprompter. He just read it. Kamala, same thing, only she's doing it out she's doing it in front of an audience. Like, hey, I can read my teleprompter, I can read my speech. She cannot handle any questions.
No, I mean, look at her. How are you not, as a Democrat voter, thinking like, uh-oh, like she's clearly dodging. She doesn't like the question. The most liberal senator, more so than Bernie Sanders, rubber stamping every single thing that goes down the list. And here's our question for the Dem voters. You listed off a few, Jason. Green New Deal. These people actually want you to believe that they can manipulate the weather if you just pay more taxes. Think about that. You want to give the government more money and power because you think that they're going to be able to change the weather and make storms less powerful and not heat the earth so fast. I'm no scientist. I'm no biologist like Ketanji Brown Jackson, but I seem to understand. I have a basic grasp on, the ecology of the world. And I don't think taxes are going to make the sun less powerful. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Well, I'm just thinking like, and we've talked about this before, but the Democrats, like, government is God in the church for them. The government can fix the weather. The government can fix housing. The government has unlimited money that they can give to everybody. If only we bow down to the government, give everything to the government, they can do whatever it is. Like, they can make us utopia. And I look at the government, and no offense to anybody working for the government, it is the least efficiently run organization I've seen in my lifetime. Like, I've never seen like, oh, thank God the government got involved in that. That really turned out well.
That kept prices down and that made efficiency go up.
Right.
I was at the DMV getting my new driver's license, and this older guy next to me is like, for DMVs, this isn't bad. And that's the best you can say. Like, this DMV is not as bad as the other DMVs that I've been to. Like, no one's ever saying this is a good experience. The post office never did overnight deliveries until they had competition from FedEx and UPS. What has government done that has gotten better? Maybe that should just be our opening question. We should get a Democrat on here and interview them. Like, can you name something that's better because of government?
Right. Well, I got to say, every now and then we get it in the chat. I get it on my personal Facebook page when I share the link to the video. And it's like, we have crazy Democrats like, oh, and it's funny because all their answers are, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump. And it's like, can you not at least concede the fact that Democrats have really stupid policies and government's awful?
Yeah, I want to preview our Rumble only. So folks, at 10 a.m., we're going to be switching over to just Rumble and Twitter because that's where they allow free speech. And we can say things that Facebook and YouTube don't like necessarily. I'm just going to read Elizabeth's comment here. And this is a preview of where we're going to go on Rumble. They should be asked if it's okay for the government like Newsom and Walz to take away your job to protect your children from making choices about sex changes at 12-year-old. We're getting into the kid situation. This is the hill I'm willing to die on. It is frightening what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, both of their states, are doing, passing legislation that affect you and your family. It is, if you're okay with that and you're voting Democrat still after we talk about that issue, I mean, I'm already shaking my head that you're going to vote Democrat, but that is just pure evil. So we'll get to that at Rumble at 10 a.m. here.
We will, yeah. And just clarify, we're at a new time. We probably got new people seeing the podcast. We broadcast every Friday. We do an hour on all of our social media that we run through the American Tribune properties. So we do Facebook, YouTube. We drop it on Rumble. We drop it on our Twitter pages. You can follow Todd and I on Twitter. But there are some topics that we just can't talk about on Facebook, on YouTube, or they get cranky about it. And we try to be factually based. Like, we're going to talk about actual legislation that's been passed in Minnesota. We're going to clarify things. We call our podcast Freedom for the Press because we want to say, like, just here's the facts, do with it what you will. And, we are both Trump voters, but honestly, we both think the Republican Party's corrupt. So it's the government's corrupt. They're lying to you. The media is lying to you. We try to just show you the facts. And like this video clip, all those people that are going, oh, Kamala's great. This was Kamala 3-4 years ago before she dropped out from the presidential campaign.
Is she less liberal now after being vice president in Joe Biden's most radical administration ever?
Right.
I like
Yeah, I
this
have no
comment here.
idea.
I'm just going to read it from Toriak. I'll believe they care about global warming when I don't see toxins sprayed in the sky. That could be a fun Rumble-only episode as well, Jason.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you bring up the chemtrails on some of these platforms, they don't like it.
All right, we're gonna switch gears here. Here's Tim Walz. So there's Kamala, most liberal senator. We can go through every single policy she's done, but let's listen to what Tim Walz believes about your ability to speak freely.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
All right, clearly clipped and edited, but I don't think we need more than like 5 seconds. This is what he believes, folks. Free speech is only free as long as it's constrained by ignoring whatever they determine misinformation is that day, whatever hate speech is that day. And hate speech can only go one way, remember. It's always, me and Jason and folks that look like me and Jason hating on other people, but can't have free speech if we're talking about democracy. That's that's not what that means.
Well, and it's fascinating here because so at risk of our feeds on some of these channels, when Donald Trump said a certain virus came out of China, everybody that said that on social media pages and certain platforms had their page shut down, nuked, whatnot. Now it's been proven by multiple government agencies that that was the origin of it. That was dangerous misinformation that was labeled. When global warming was the thing instead of climate change, if you said, no, the globe isn't warming, that was dangerous misinformation. And then they had to concede, yeah, it turns out it's not just global warming, it's climate change because, the data now shows it's cooling. And they want to control your speech, your language, and even the topics of things that you can talk about. And to have to protect you from misinformation when the government itself is the one who publishes these numbers or these studies or these reports that are proven wrong. And it's fascinating. I make this reference probably way too many times, but I talked to a friend of mine from England, and he says the most fascinating thing is your government and the media, they come out and say, oh, they were lying to you about that for like 20 years. But they're not lying to you now, and you all believe it. Do you remember when tobacco wasn't bad for you? Do you remember that when sugar was good for you? Do you remember the food pyramid that said just eat a bunch of carbohydrates and you'll be great? Oh, it turns out all that was wrong. All that was really not good for you. But now this time, Todd, the government's telling the truth.
Yeah, Trump colluded with Russia. Trump needed to be impeached for investigating Ukraine. Oh, by the way, Hunter Biden might be investigated for working with Burisma during the exact same time frame Donald Trump wanted to investigate Ukraine. He said things about bleach. Things happened with koi fish, mocking dead soldiers, Charlottesville, like all of those things the media lied to you about. That's not misinformation. And when they own up to it later on, covering Joe Biden's senility, no. That is just them reporting the truth at the time, and the truth changed later on. If you dare question that or call that out, you are spreading misinformation. But they're totally telling the truth this time about Kamala Harris being the best president ever.
If you don't hate these people enough, and the person I'm mad at, and we didn't want to subject you guys to the full clip, is the media host that just sits there nodding along as they're saying, like, yeah, we shouldn't ban differing opinions, because the fact of the matter is two different people can look at the same set of data and draw different conclusions. Two different people can look at different facts and say, well, you think that, oh, I think this. It's like we've talked about the Trump assassination attempt. It came out yesterday. They've already cremated the body before they got the autopsy results. Weird data point. I have no idea what happened with the assassination other than the kid took a shot at him. But doesn't anybody find it weird that, and nobody told anyone that they cremated the body. So this kid who was killed, they did the investigation, released him. The police department didn't even know. Family had him cremated, haven't even got the autopsy results back. I'm like, that's just weird.
That's
but
weird.
if you
and the FBI apparently cleaned up the entire site immediately or within a couple days.
Right.
One of the most important criminal scenes this year. How far back do you want to go? But just cleaned up, scrubbed, body cremated, tidily packaged and put away. Don't worry about it. We are telling you the truth.
Right. Oh,
man.
Where do we travel to now, Todd?
Where can you travel after all of this? Well, here's another good one. So, Jason, did you hear about how Google was allegedly manipulating some searches and headlines?
You'll need to frame this up for the audience, because if they haven't seen it, this is just fascinating.
You know that certain big tech companies are lying to you every day. If you've ever done like a Google search, this is my favorite one. I think I read this in a Douglas Murray book, The Madness of Crowds. He would go through Google images and do like white man, white woman, black man, black woman. And folks, I encourage you to try this right now. I haven't done the search recently, but I think it's probably the same. If you Google search white man, you're going to get this like diverse, just you've got black and white couples. You've got a white woman in there, maybe a white guy, because that's your Curie word. If you do black man, it is all black images. Are you doing it right now, Jason?
No, I'm actually looking up the Donald Trump one.
All right. But they manipulate everything you see. Kamala Harris's campaign, I'm not going to say that they colluded with Google, or if Google is just run by leftist tards as well that want to support Kamala Harris. They manipulated what you would see when you search certain things. So if you want to find bad press on Kamala, good luck getting that from Google, which is by far the world's most popular search engine. So completely interfering with the election. Here we are manipulating data and information for folks to get at, but I'm spreading misinformation every day. Here is Kamala Harris's campaign spokesman or a CNN analysis defending the decision to have Google scrub bad headlines about Kamala and only promote the most glowing and positive ones out there.
So this presidential campaign contacted Google, and they manipulated the Google algorithm so that when you search for Kamala, you don't get any of her stuff. And remember on that clip earlier where they were talking about, hey, they rated you as the most liberal senator? That's been scrubbed from their website. So if you go on and look at her Senate voting record, it's no longer on one of the biggest websites for rating how liberal or conservative you are.
Yeah. And as an aside, I saw End Wokeness tweeted that they changed J.D. Vance's Wikipedia page. So it didn't have all of the medals that he won and the awards he won in the military service. It just says J.D. Vance, Marine Corps.
Right.
But yeah, let's take a listen. This is pretty astounding.
In the break, in terms of, is this something that's normal? Is this something that campaigns have been using? How do you defend kind of the...
Yeah. Well, this is part of paid advertising. I mean, if you are somebody who's reading a news outlet on your phone, you'll see embedded ads come up sometimes in those stories that, for on first glance, look like a story by the outlet you're reading. But if you don't, if you look at it more closely, it says sponsored content. I mean, this is something that the search engines do. It's part of the way they generate ad revenue. So there's nothing about it that is violates their terms or is in any way unethical. I mean, this is part of the way that paid advertising works. And, you'll see it. It's certainly not just political campaigns who do it. I mean, just as I am reading things online, sometimes I'll I'll sort of double look at something because it feels like it's an authentic piece of content. And then you see it's paid. So it is incumbent on the viewer, the reader, the consumer to have a discerning eye, not just on political content, but on...
When it's Democrats that do shady stuff, it's on you, the reader and viewer, to discern for yourself. But when it's us promoting content, Tim Walz wants to shut it down because it is misinformation.
Yeah, I was going to say the juxtaposition of those two clips should really... we keep saying, like, at some point people got to wake up, and a lot of people in our audience are gonna understand this. But you have them saying we have to screen misinformation, and then you have the campaign saying, well, yeah, we're engaging in deceptive advertising practices, but technically it's allowed, so it should be okay, and it's not a problem. So if we are going to do we as Democrats are going to do deceptive advertising practices that aren't true, but technically don't break a rule, completely fine. If you are spreading a lot, and this is about an election, I have heard for 5 years that democracy's at stake and fake news is bad and all that. They're admitting right in front of you that they engage in these practices, and it's fine.
Jason, I don't know how much the Harris campaign has spent on these deceptive ads. I seem to recall Russia put in a couple tens of thousands of dollars on Facebook or social media in 2016, and suddenly Trump stole the election with Russia's help. I would wager that Kamala Harris has spent way more money manipulating your thoughts and feelings around this election, but it's your fault that you can't discern it now.
It's unbelievable what these guys are justifying in the actions that they're going through, Todd.
And Scott Ferry says it great. The sooner we all realize we are still being manipulated by mass media, the better. Yeah, and that's one of those questions for folks out there. I referenced that Colbert clip when even the Colbert audience laughed at that line, CNN tells the truth. They kind of get it, but how do you not get it at this point? Like, maybe we should just run down all of CNN's lies at some point too. Like, how do you still trust the media? And the media and Democrats are basically synonymous at this point. How do you trust the regime and the establishment? Like, we've exposed all of their hoaxes and lies, and you still line up and say, like, this time they're telling the truth.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the terrifying part. You know, Todd and I in the pre-show when we were talking is like, how many of these people just really don't care? You know, it's kind of like when we went through COVID and the lockdowns in Minnesota was really draconian. And it occurred to me, like, have we really reached the point where this many Americans just don't care? I mean, can you, as a watcher of this audience who likely is probably a Trump voter or more of an independent or whatnot, you share these clips with the Democrats. Okay, here are these guys saying fake news, misinformation, threat to democracy, and here is them admitting to doing it. And so does this change, or does this trouble you? Do you have any concerns? And then they look at you and go, red man or orange man bad, but orange man bad. And we're reaching a really fascinating.
Yeah, and as far as COVID, just so folks understand where Minnesota's coming from, Tim Walz was reelected in 2022 after everything he did to small businesses, families, churches. If you wanted to work in certain jobs, that was supported in the state. People reelected him. I don't think it's that they don't care. I think they actually want it at this point.
Yeah. Is it just govern me harder, Daddy?
Yeah, take care of me. I can't think for myself. I don't want to think for myself. You just lock me down and you punish those people that want freedom. How dare they want freedom?
Although it will be interesting because, no offense, the MAGA crowd, we're the productive crowd. We're the ones that, you know, haul your garbage. We're the ones that fix your plumbing. We're the ones that build your house. And you crazy liberals with a gender study degree who serve coffee at Starbucks, you're a little less essential to functioning society than you think you are. Just saying.
All right, where do we go? Well, you know, we talked about media manipulation. As if we didn't need more examples, just listen for some key buzzwords, and you tell me if they aren't all reading off the same script on this one.
Momentum. New numbers showing the Harris-Walz ticket is gaining ground.
Vice President Harris gaining momentum.
Momentum in some key states.
This morning, Vice President Kamala Harris gaining momentum.
Gaining momentum.
Gaining momentum.
Gaining momentum.
But look, this momentum, keeping the momentum.
Harris's momentum.
Harris's momentum.
You can't slow down the momentum.
It's remarkable momentum.
Mission number one is create the momentum and then keep the momentum. What does momentum look like in the polls?
Kamala Harris is doing two things here. Number one, momentum, and number two, momentum. But take a look here. Clear momentum.
So momentum it is today.
Momentum it is.
Democrats ride a wave of momentum.
She does have that momentum. The Democrats are riding a wave of momentum, generating a kind of momentum.
The Harris team is going to want to keep this momentum.
Keep the momentum going.
They want to keep that momentum.
The momentum here is amazing. The crowds are literally insane.
This momentum, it just seems day in and day out to keep getting more powerful by the day.
The trend is heavily towards Harris, and it's rushing towards Harris in recent weeks. The vice president at this point throwing the equivalent of a no-hitter in the first 3 weeks of her campaign, hoping to keep that going with the Democratic convention next week.
Completely organic support for Kamala Harris, though, right? Like,
right.
Democrat voter, you are being manipulated. Once again, this is par for the course for your worldview and existence, but do you not see that they're just lying to you? There's no momentum outside of the word getting used by media pundits.
Well, I will actually disagree slightly with you, Todd. I think some Democrats all knew they were being lied to. They knew Joe Biden was a vegetable. They knew he was a potato, right? And then they all saw it. And it's kind of like if you've raised kids and like your kid's doing stupid stuff, but you just don't want to admit it, and then finally you're confronted with the fact that okay, my kid's doing stupid stuff, and I guess I got to deal with this. And the debate with Donald Trump, Democrats like, okay, we can't deny this anymore. You're right. So they switch it. It was about a week of throwing Joe Biden off the bunch, which we predicted on this podcast a year ago. We even nailed the timing that it would be right before the convention. Go back, watch the episode. We were breaking down who's replaced. It was kind of fun. But so I think these guys, and there was an old Eddie Murphy bit, if you ever watch Raw, where he was talking about like a guy starving in the desert, comes out of a desert, you give him a saltine and he eats that saltine and he's like, this is the best cracker I ever had. Then after a week or two, you're like, this is a saltine. This is the arc the Democrats are going to go through. Like, people are super excited. Like, they switch them out for Kamala. She's doing no interviews. She's delivering the same speech in 6 different venues. She's got rappers and rock stars to get a big crowd. They're paying influencers to share stuff on social media, and you're tuning in and like, if you're a Democrat, you're like, she's the same retarded person we had like 4 or 5 weeks ago that we thought was an idiot. Now suddenly she's like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and your brain's just breaking.
And for the life of me, I'll never cease being disappointed by the American voter. Who is this American Democrat voter out there that voted for Biden in 2020, kind of was like, I'm going to sit this one out because I'm not excited about Joe Biden anymore. Now I'm excited about Kamala Harris. Her momentum will wane, and then I'm not going to vote for her. Like, how is anyone out there just like, I was going to, and now I'm not? Like, Jason, you and I from day one are like, it is Trump or bust. Like, Donald Trump is the only one that's going to save this country. He could say something stupid. I don't care. He's going to govern with great policies. I'm voting for Donald Trump. I'm not changing my mind on that. Like, what's the alternative anyways? Like, even if you don't like Donald Trump, what's the alternative? These idiot Dems out there are like, oh, bad press from Biden. Now I'm not going to. Joe Biden's senile. Kamala Harris, now I'm excited about her. She's going to govern with the same policies, but I wasn't going to vote for Biden, but I will vote for her. Like, what is your thought process? How are you a Democrat voter? And 1 second you'll vote, 1 second you won't. And then if you are going to vote, you didn't like Biden's policies and you think Harris's policies are going to be different. There's just so much stupidity going around American Democrat voters right now. I just can't.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I wish someday we could get Democrats on here. Like, I've thrown it out to a couple friends or a couple people that try to troll, like, hop on the show, like, come explain your position.
Please.
And please, like, we can't, and I've
we'll
talked about, like,
we're very nice guys. Conservatives are nicer than Democrats anyways, but please walk us through if you can even, we're going to be generous and call it a thought process. I don't think there's any thinking, Jason.
Right.
But let us know why. How do you rationalize this?
Well, and it's even like her thing today. We talked about, price controls and all that. Like, price controls are awful and they never work. It's anybody not smart enough to see that. And are we going to see all the economists who know that's true come out with these, like,
yes, we are.
150 different economists say this is really stupid, because it's like one of the basic things they teach you when you study economics. Like, price controls just don't work. It breaks the system. But if you're going to go on here and you say, okay, so we inflated money, we printed all this extra currency, we're in this huge deficit spending, so cash is worth less. So, but you're not really earning much more than you were before. So that's why things feel like they can't be affordable. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to print more money and we're going to give it to different people so they can afford to buy a house. And that's not going to make things cost more. Like, I don't even understand the thought project or the Venn diagram that gets us to that point.
Yeah, I would love to sit down, and this is an open invitation. If you are a viewer on this channel, thank you for watching, by the way, but if you are going to vote Democrat and you support Joe Biden, you support Kamala Harris, you are welcomed on this show. We will be polite to you. We'll have a civil conversation. We just need to understand where you're coming from.
Right.
And I would love to ask, just like, and this is my plea to people sitting on the fence, or they don't like Trump's personality because they think like children. Like, be a grown-up, vote for Donald Trump if you like this country and want to save something for your kids when they grow up. Setting aside all of that, what does Donald Trump, what will he do worse than Kamala Harris? Like, from a policy perspective, in what realm is Kamala Harris going to succeed Donald Trump? Like, I honestly can't think of a single thing that Harris will do better. What do Democrats have to offer at this point? You're going to vote for Kamala Harris because she does X, Y, Z, and
Willie Harris has a few things Kamala does better.
Oh, yeah, right. I love how people are upset that Trump cheated on his wife, and then Kamala Harris was the actual homewrecker.
Right.
Oh, yeah, Donald Trump's such a bad person. He cheated on his wife. Oh, we'll just ignore the fact that Kamala Harris slept her way to the top, and her husband had an affair with his nanny, apparently. Like, yeah, these are such good people. You can't even play the good person card anymore. She is just awful.
And you can't even play the threat to democracy card, because literally Kamala Harris in 2020 was the first major candidate that dropped out of the presidential race because she was getting zero support. The only time she saw a spike in momentum is when she called Joe Biden racist after the first debate. Literally, go back. I was going back reading articles and watching clips, and it was Kamala Harris in the first debate gives the school bus story where she talks about how Joe Biden was racist and didn't support it. And she was one of those first kids to
freedom.
Right, freedom. And that was her spike. She surged to like 10%, and then she quickly, people were like, oh yeah, no, she's stupid.
Oh, she's
She
still
was back
retarded.
down to 3%, and then she drops out with 0 people voting for her. Joe Biden, who everybody told us won the 2020 election very convincingly, like it was great, and they said Joe Biden was fine and he has the best policies ever. And how many times did we hear Joe Biden? Oh, it's going to be a tight one with Trump. He was doing so bad, they kicked him out. They ran a coup. They did it they knew Joe Biden was bad 4 months ago when they could have run a primary. They chose not to. So now they're like, no, not only are we going to switch out the candidates, but we're going to give you this one because this is the one we want. And so, I mean, I don't even know how Democrats, so you can't make the quality person argument. You can't make the threat to democracy argument.
You clearly can't make the policy argument.
Right.
Like, what is there left to support? Again, open invitation. If you are a Democrat out there, we actually, I in good faith want to understand. We shared the story last week, Jason, of how I was at that birthday party for a kid, and some Democrat goober in Minnesota was like, how can you live with yourself supporting Donald Trump? And he got all high and mighty on me. I tried to have a good faith conversation with him. He just completely, his brain is melted. He had to bring up Donald Trump over and over again, but I want to hear an actual argument for why you think this is a good thing.
Right.
That's it.
Oh, Todd, we're wrapping up the first hour.
Do we have, let's see if we have a short clip we can go to. I thought I had one more Kamala one here. Oh, we got to do this one. This is a little bit on a lighter note, but again, Kamala the fraud. They'll tell you Donald Trump's a fraud all day. Just listen to this.
Afraid of hard work? We like hard work, don't we? Hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. We like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. Big sisters and brothers, big sisters and brothers. Thank you to the sisters and brothers of UAW. So we need this November. We're going to beat them in November.
This just in, Democrats pander to the black community.
I was going to say, so let me get this right, Todd. So you're saying if I go address a black audience, I need to talk hood and not enunciate words correctly?
You need to speak down to them, yes.
Okay. I'm glad we were able to cover that. And I got to say, if you're an inner city black and you see this elitist white woman who's been in the Senate for years and she's wearing, I mean, look at that outfit. I bet that necklace is 50 grand. And she said, we going to beat him in November. And somehow that you don't find that.
Now I'm going to vote for her. She speaks like me, even though she's mocking you.
Right.
Kamala Harris doesn't speak like that.
Right.
Jason, I got a fun story from my time in public schools. So the last city I worked in, it was predominantly black population. We no longer corrected, you couldn't grade a kid on spelling or speech anymore because that was too white. So we would let kids in the school system where we're supposed to teach them and prepare them for life outside of school, you are no longer allowed to mention, criticize, grade, critique spelling and speech, because God forbid you have a standard English taught. And so you've got these little kids that I felt bad for them. They didn't know any better. This was accepted by their mostly older white teachers. We could have a whole episode on how white women are ruining this country too, probably. But these poor kids, nope, I can't grade your spelling anymore because you spelled it November, and that's exactly how you say it.
I can't even. and you look at this and it's like, how is this not like the most racist thing you've ever seen? Why are they not on the news media saying Kamala Harris? Can you imagine if Donald Trump got out there and started talking jigaboo? Like,
I think Tim Walz should go out to Atlanta and try saying that.
Right. Yeah, it is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. Well, one of the more bizarre things, because we got to talk about this kid stuff, Todd.
We do. I'm not fired up enough yet.
You're not fired up enough yet. Well, hey, folks, we got to take this conversation over to Rumble. So if you don't have Rumble, Rumble is a free speech platform. Think of it like YouTube. We love our Facebook audience. It's actually one of the chattier groups. You don't get a lot of chats on over on Rumble. But unfortunately, Facebook, we have topics that we want to talk about that will be labeled dangerous disinformation or misinformation, and they will take down our pages. We actually have 1 million follower page that we are in the process. It's been almost a year of getting it republished because they didn't like stuff we said on it. And so if you go over to Rumble, download the app. Our channel is The American Tribune. That's where you'll see Todd does video clips every day. He does like a dozen of them of news things. And a lot of it's what we reference on here. And that's where we stream our podcast live. So we really encourage you to travel over there.
Yeah, we'd love to see you. So we'll be back in a minute here. We're going to do a little bit of an outro, say goodbye to our Facebook audience, our YouTube audience. But folks, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, like Jason said, hop on over to Rumble. You can follow us on Twitter as well. We've got a couple different accounts over there, but we are just getting started because we're going to talk about what Democrats want to do with you and your family.